college football week 11 recap here on Unafraid Show. It was a hell of a weekend. We got more upsets. So remember, I'm old enough to remember when people were talking about Georgia. Why isn't Georgia ranked number 2? Why is Ohio State ranked in front of them? Well, they ran into Ole Miss and got their head chopped off. And then you got Miami. Miami has been living on the edge. And we got to talk about that because, of course, they fell off the cliff. The Big Ten is shining right now. Oh, they look like new money. And there's a difference between the action that the SEC was getting in the preseason polls versus what's going on right now. And we really got to examine that. Who is the best conference? Because you're getting big time matchups in the SEC. And drama has been created in the SEC by only playing 8 conference games. And we got to discuss all of that and more. But you know where we start, though. We start with our best games of the week. And, our best teams of the week. Our 5 best teams of week 11 in college football. But before we do that, make sure that you guys like, subscribe, tell your friend about the show. I'm going to give you a second. Hop in the comments because you know I respond to the comments on here as well. So hop in the chat. Hop everywhere else because you know we are going to talk about everything under the sun, people. Under the sun. All right, so my 5 best teams of the week. We're going to start with number 1, and that is Georgia Tech. Dude, Georgia Tech upsetting Miami 28-23. Huge opportunity. And mind you, this is the same team that upset Miami last year on a Mario Cristobal, as Ralph would say, galaxy brain play. Instead of kneeling the ball, they decided to run it, and then they fumbled and Georgia Tech won. So this is back-to-back losses. And Miami has been flirting with the cliff for so long. And we'll talk more about that game in just a little bit. The second best team of the weekend, Alabama versus LSU. Dude, Alabama literally did the exact same game plan that they did versus LSU last year. And Brian Kelly clearly had no answer for that. It was an atrocious performance by the LSU defense, and they should be embarrassed because you knew what was going to happen. Jalen Milroe was going to run the football. Number 3, the number 1 team in the nation. Kept it up, kept it rolling. Now, they did not cover the 25 points, but they made it 21, so it's still a decisive victory against Maryland, and that's the Oregon Ducks. Good job. Number 4, Lord have mercy. Did anybody see what happened to Washington by Penn State? Did anybody see what happened to Washington by Penn State? 36-5. And 35-6. A 35-6 victory. Now, they were 2 touchdown favorites, basically. And this is a game that I messed up on because I picked Washington. I thought for some reason, even though that they were 0-4 on the road, that they were going to be able to keep pace because their pass defense is one of the best in the nation. But alas, nothing left there. But I know this game made Penn State fans extremely mad. Number 4 of the best teams of week 11, best performing teams, not in order of who is best, is Ole Miss. That 28-10 domination over Georgia, damn near a masterpiece. Hang that in the Louvre. That was a special win. And now, Georgia looks mortal. You can try to tell me everything that you want to tell me about this Georgia team, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But what you're not going to tell me is that this is some great football team. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's a good football team. It ain't no great football team. All right, and the last of the week, the last of the 5 best of the week is the UCLA Bruins. A 20-17 victory over Iowa? What? Are we kidding me? This team is now 4-5, potential bowl eligibility? Are we serious? 1-3 in a row? Whoever would have thought it after the way that they started the season? and their head coach, Deshaun Foster, that man deserves a lot of credit. Deshaun Foster deserves a lot of credit after a lot of people were criticizing and wondering if the right man was hired. Yes, Martin Jarmon hired the right man. Now on to the worst the worst 5 teams of week 11. The worst 5 teams of week 11. So you got the Miami Hurricanes, who got beat up by Georgia Tech, and Mario Cristobal. I know this about him from him coaching at Oregon. He don't like to be pushed around, and they got pushed around. Number 2, the LSU Tigers, 42-6 to Alabama. Put up a fight. You didn't even score a touchdown, and this Alabama defense has been mortal all year. So this brings into question everything at LSU. Worst teams, Georgia. Georgia 28-10. We just talked about that against Ole Miss. Are you kidding me? What's up with Carson Beck, the first round pick? Now, Carson Beck going to be back in school next year. That's where Carson Beck going to be. And he might not be at Georgia because we know how this transfer portal thing works. Number 4, Washington. Their 35-6 loss to Penn State absolutely makes your eyes bleed to watch what you saw if you're a Washington fan. And number 5, this is a team that I did not believe that I would be talking about again for the year, but their loss was so incredibly bad. How could I not? And that is Florida State. They lost to Notre Dame 52-3. 52-3. What are we doing here, fam? What are we doing? Nasty work. All right. Here are some things that we have going on in 2024 in college football. Look, BYU. BYU. If you thought that we would be talking about BYU at the beginning of this season, you would be a liar because they were picked damn near to finish last in the Big 12. And now they have their 5th ever 9-0 start. This is the new normal season in college football. The new normal season in college football. So we are going to get outlier results every single year. So the constants that you're used to. Alabama winning 11 games. Georgia winning 11 games. Michigan and Ohio State determining the Big Ten winner. The ACC being determined by Clemson and Florida State. The Big 12 being Oklahoma and Texas, even though they're not in the conference anymore. All these things are different. Utah was expected to roll in the conference. And now they're not. It's BYU, Colorado at the top. Then you got Indiana, their first ever 10-win season in program history. New normal season. Kurt Cinggetti. It's amazing what some transfers, some belief, and some good coaching. You mix them up in the witch's brew, and you get success. Those are the ingredients. You look at the Oregon Ducks. They are the 3rd Big Ten team to win 10 games in its first season in the conference, and the first team to defeat both Michigan and Ohio State in the same season since 2015. And now Indiana has the opportunity to do that this year too when they get Ohio State in 2 weeks. Then we got Colorado in this new normal season, 7-2, their best start since 2000. That is 24 years ago, people. 24 years ago. So if you are a Deion Sanders hater, I told you a couple weeks ago, you better, it is time to apologize. Like, stop being like that. Oh, his ego. Kurt Cinggetti got an ego. Dan Lanning got an ego. Kirby Smart got an ego. All these coaches have egos. Dabo Swinney got an ego. They all do. But when you put good film down, your record says what you are, and they are a good football team. And then at the same time of all of this, you got Army, who's 9-0, tied for the best start ever. 13 straight wins going back to last year, longest active winning streak in FBS. This is what we get in this new normal season. And so the thing I love about it is that you can't just roll your helmets out and win anymore. Now how well you coach, how well you retain your players. And some coaches, yes, they're getting frustrated with it. Oh, transfer portal, NIL. Listen, if you coach well, if you send guys to the NFL and you keep hope alive, your players will, well, and you have some NIL money, your players will stay. And most of them will stay for a little less money. That's just how this whole thing works. Now, this is the new normal season. And now we have gotten, because of the college football playoff, we have gotten the SEC, which has gotten itself into major trouble. Because how many SEC teams are going to get into the playoffs? Because we're watching big time games, Ole Miss, Georgia, Georgia, Tennessee. We're watching top games. And it's like the community at large is forgetting that these same games are going on inside the Big Ten. The Big Ten, Oregon has played Ohio State, Penn State, Penn State, Ohio State. You're gonna have Indiana, who plays Ohio State. The big games are happening in the Big Ten as well amongst the top teams. The difference is that this season, when the season started, the SEC teams were ranked so high in the preseason. Like you had Missouri in the top 10. You had all these teams in the top 10. And how many seasons when the Pac 12, when the Big 12, when the Big 10 would lose, the narrative on television would say, oh, these teams played themselves out of the college football playoff. Well, why, for some reason, when the SEC does it, does this not matter? Is it, oh man, this conference is just so damn tough? Yes, the conference is good. It's tough. But the difference between this year and other years is there's no elite team in the SEC. There are some really good teams, but there are not elite teams. And 9 conference games would avoid what we're having right now, which is a very possible scenario where you have Ole Miss at 10-2, Georgia at 10-2, Tennessee at 10-2, Texas at 10-2, Texas A&M at 10-2, and LSU or Alabama at 10-2. Actually, LSU can no longer be 10-2, but Alabama at 10-2. That's what we got. Are you kidding me? And now, if you add another conference game into it, that just changes the whole dynamic of everything. Because number one, that means that you're adding another conference game, which increases the amount of losses that teams have to take. And then you won't end up with this 6-way potential tie and then trying to say, well, I guess all these teams deserve to be in the college football playoff. No, that is not the case. They don't all deserve to be in the college football playoff. Now, let's get into these games, though. Let's get into these games. Now, I'm going to give you a chance to like, subscribe, tell a friend about the show, and make sure that you guys share. Hop in the comments now, and we will get to your comments during the show. But you guys, we are almost at 20,000 subscribers, and it is because you guys have done your job. And we got a big giveaway coming for 20,000 subs. All right, but we got to start with this Miami Georgia Tech game, 28-23. Miami absolutely got pushed around in this game. And I know Mario Cristobal from his time in Oregon, from our conversations, things that you hear him say, the way he has built 2 consecutive rosters is to be big, physical, and strong. And so there's a little bit of ego involved with it, but also it's how you play football. And Miami got pushed around by Georgia Tech. Hayes King is the quarterback for Georgia Tech. You know what they're coming there to do. Quarterback run the football, and you know it. It ain't no secret. And Hayes King, this offensive line, and their 3rd and 4th string running back lined up, and they checked Miami's chin straps. You know when people are like, oh, it's a double chin strap game. Nah, Miami was like, yo, we going to come in here and we going to knock y'all ish loose. We gonna knock y'all helmets loose. So you better tighten them up. And that's what they did. In Miami, the cat ran out of lives. The cardiac cats ran out of lives because you can only escape the trap so many times. They were down to Virginia Tech by 10 in the second half. They were down by Cal by 25 in the second half. They were down to Duke by 11 in the second half. And then they were down by 12 to Georgia Tech in this game. Yes, eventually you're going to lose if you keep doing that. If you keep doing that. It's just the reality. So, and then you have people wanting us to believe that this team is capable of winning a national championship. What about Miami that we have seen? Yes, Cam Ward has been sensational. But what about this team leads us to believe that this is a national championship caliber team? This defense has been shredded at times, even though statistically they've been really good against the run, but they give up a ton of points. Their quarterback, Cam Ward, who I say the full Cam Ward experience, he will giveth, he will taketh away, and usually he giveth back. But in this game, he couldn't giveth back. And Miami's only played one team that is currently ranked right now, and that is Louisville. So with the fact that they've struggled with unranked teams, how are we supposed to believe that this team is national championship worthy? But, however, there is still time to improve their play, fix their defense. But you are who you are, though. And does Miami deserve to be in the top 12? Yes. You can't say that they have any more warts than Georgia. You can't say that they have any more warts than Alabama, except for Alabama at least beat Georgia. You can't say that they don't have any warts. So, yes, they should be in just by the body of their work. But we cannot call them elite. All right, next game up. We got Georgia versus Ole Miss. And Georgia versus Ole Miss, 28-10. Georgia got bullied. That's what it came down to. And the college football playoff is on the line this week when they play against Tennessee. Like this, when Tennessee plays Georgia, that is for all the marbles for Georgia. That's it. And we've watched this Georgia team be mid a couple of weeks. We saw them be mid against Kentucky, escape Kentucky. We saw them struggle with a hurt, injured, and beat up and freshman-led Florida team. And maybe if DJ Lagway doesn't get hurt, they lose this football game. And in this game versus Ole Miss made sure Georgia could not run the football. They finished the game. I want to be clear so I'm accurate. 33 carries for 59 yards. When have we ever seen a Georgia team just not be able to run the football ever at all? Since Kirby Smart has gotten things rolling. No, it hasn't happened. That's the tough part about this whole scenario is that Georgia is now their fans, their fan base, their team. They are having a hard piece of reality right now. Like, ooh, like we're cool, but we're not special right now. We can't just throw our jerseys out and win. Absolutely not. You have to show up and win the damn game. So the question about Georgia has to surround Carson Beck. Because Carson Beck in this game was 20 for 31, 186 yards, and an interception. And this was a time when we have seen him that he does not look confident. And my son is a quarterback in college right now. And we talked about, have you paid attention to the last couple of weeks? Think about this. Go back and watch the videos and see it. Carson Beck sitting on the sideline with his helmet on. I'm gonna give you a prime example. Prime example. when you see a quarterback sitting in the oh damn, I can't even get the helmet on no more. My head too big now. Anyways, when you see a quarterback sitting there with his helmet on and he's just sitting there, he's hiding. That's the problem. And then remember when Kirby Smart called him up in the locker room after last week's win? He made big throws when it mattered. He looked like he wanted to cry because his confidence is down right now. It's not that the kid can't play. His confidence is down, and they got to figure out a way to get it up because if not, he's going to be gun shy. He's not going to want to throw the ball into tight windows because he doesn't trust what he's looking at right now. Now, on the other side of this thing, Ole Miss. Ole Miss, who has 2 losses already. They have that one that you can't explain against Kentucky. And then they got that LSU loss, which makes no sense now either, right? So that means that Ole Miss can be beat by pretty much anybody in the country. But they have had this Georgia game circled. They were able to get pressure. And I'm telling you, this is why Lane Kiffin went in the transfer portal. He begged the boosters and the donors for all that money, and it showed up, and it showed up in this Georgia game. Carson Beck was under constant pressure. Under constant pressure. They got 5 sacks in the game. 5 sacks. And you got Jackson Dart, what was he? 13 for 22, 199 yards, touchdown, and a pick. And he started out the game a little bit shaky. But now the question is Georgia just a middle of the road team? Or did Ole Miss wake up and this inexplicably two-loss Ole Miss team just hitting their stride and they are an elite team now? I am going to go with the former and just say Georgia's just okay. And Ole Miss is a team that if you let them have opportunities and they get that pass rush on you, they are going to cause problems. But let's look at what Georgia has on the way out. Georgia has Tennessee, UMass, and then Georgia Tech. The Tennessee game, questionable because Nico Iamaleava may not be playing. But UMass, they're going to roll. Georgia Tech, who knows at this point in time after the way they bullied Miami. And then you got Ole Miss, who has a bye this week. They're going to roll up Florida. Unless DJ Lagway's back, we'll see. And then they got Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl on around Thanksgiving. So we'll see. Next game up, we got Maryland versus Oregon in Eugene. Little rain never hurt nobody. 39-18. This game was a 25-point. They were 25-point favorites, and I want everybody to pay attention to what happened because on its face, you would look at this game and you say, "Oh, Oregon didn't put forth their best performance. They didn't, this wasn't excellent work and everything else." I want you to pay attention to the details. There's a quote that I used to like when I was playing in the league. It said, "Let your bad days be good, your good days be great, and your great days be legendary." So Oregon had a great day against Ohio State, legendary day. This was what you might consider a bad day, but it was still really good. Now, the thing that was not good about this Oregon team was the penalties. Their penalties literally gave Maryland all 18 points, 12 penalties for 95 yards. They had literally every type of penalty to extend drives, holding, pass interference, offsides, every single type of penalty, late hit quarterback, every single type of penalty that you could possibly need, they gave it to Maryland. It's just the truth. And now Maryland caused some of the penalties, but the reality is Oregon had been playing clean. And you're not going to be able to maintain this high level all season long. But when you don't bring your A game and you still win by 21 points against a team that's throwing the ball for well over 300 yards a game and everything else, you are going to be excited about it and you're going to be able to live with it. And remember a couple weeks ago when Oregon kicked a couple of field goals against Purdue? And I explained to you guys that Dan Lanning didn't go for it in those situations because he wanted to get his field goal kicker some work. I want you to pay attention to this game because people are saying, oh, the Oregon, the offense didn't look the same. No, it didn't. They went back to their vanilla game plans that they were doing in the beginning of the season. Because what Dan Lanning, Will Stein, and company, what they like to do is we don't have to do all of this trickeration and everything. We are going to line up and run you over because we're better than you. And that's what Oregon tried to do in the game. And they accomplished by a 21-point victory. That's the difference. Because this gives them something to go back to work on before they go to Wisconsin this weekend. Gives them something to work on, something for the coaches to harp on, be upset about, and everything else. And they did it with no Harper, so without their starting guard, no Tez Johnson, who's their number one wide receiver. They're in good shape. Very good shape. They got 2 games left. They're at Wisconsin. Then they have a bye, and then they have Washington, who got beat up by Penn State this week. But it's a rivalry game, so Washington will probably try to show up a little bit better. Alabama versus Ole Miss, 42-7. Brian Kelly said judge him year 3. Well, it's year 3. And you got 3 losses, including one of the losses to a 4-5 USC team. What are we doing here, Brian Kelly? Your defense is nowhere near where it needs to be. And this was one of the hallmark calling cards of Brian Kelly's teams, was the defense. And remember in the offseason when he talked about the defense, because they didn't land some of the defensive linemen that they were trying to get in the transfer portal. And he was like, listen, we're not going to overpay for guys. We want guys who want to be here at LSU. I told y'all then that was code name for we missed out on them for whatever reason. People will try to blame it on the transfer portal, on everything. They would try to blame it on everything. And so and Brian Kelly clearly was not aware. He was not aware that of what happened the last year when they played against Jalen Milroe. How was Brian Kelly not aware of what happened last year versus LSU? How? Because Jalen Milroe, the last game, rushed for over 141 yards and 4 touchdowns. And now, in the last 8 quarters versus LSU and Brian Kelly's defense allowed Jalen Milroe over 330 yards rushing, 8 touchdowns. What? And they allowed Alabama as a team in just this one game to rush for 311 yards. Then they couldn't protect Garrett Nussmeier. And this Alabama defense looked great in this game. So the question is, has Kalen DeBoer gotten this Alabama defense figured out? Because they were getting pushed around, they were getting points scored on them, everything else, and everything in between. So you have Bama, who has been their schedule coming up. You have Mercer, Oklahoma, and Auburn. And then you got LSU, whose schedule is Florida, Vanderbilt, and Oklahoma. So Oklahoma is their common opponent, and we are going to see which one of these teams is going to finish strong, because LSU is out of the college football playoff conversation. But the question is, can they then still keep relevant enough and keep the momentum going to finish the season out strong? All right, next game up, we got Indiana versus Michigan. And Indiana versus Michigan was huge because this was Indiana's best team that they've ever played. And they lost Indiana won 20-15. Now, I will tell you this, that Michigan at 5-5 is figuring some things out. You got Davis Warren, their quarterback, who is getting better and better. And I'm telling you, in a couple weeks, in 3 weeks, this is not going to be a layup for Ohio State. You can book it. Now, Indiana, though. Now, I'm going to tell you how good Michigan's defense is. Without their best defender, Will Johnson, and another one of their safeties out, they still held high-flying Indiana to only 20 points. They've been scoring over 40 points a game against everybody. And Michigan held them to 20? And I would take Royke, their quarterback, over Will Howard over at Ohio State. I'm just saying. So that's something to note and pay attention to. All right, so we got Indiana playing Michigan. And Indiana is still a very good football team. They have a bye this upcoming week, and then they got Ohio State. This is for all the marbles for Indiana. If they win, they go to the Big Ten championship. If they lose, they need Michigan to beat Ohio State and then win a tiebreaker versus Penn State. So everything that they want is in front of them. And if they lose, they've already seen the committee don't love them like that. Even though the AP poll moved them up to the top 5. They don't love them like that. So if they believe that if they lose to Ohio State, they may be out of the top 12. Even though there's no way that they should be when you got SEC teams with 2 and 3 losses and people still trying to shoehorn them in, trying to act like, oh, there should be 5 SEC teams and 6 maybe, whatever. Come on now. I want to talk quickly about this Colorado team because Colorado played Texas Tech 41-27. And what a difference a year makes. Because last year, this Colorado team would have been in the top 12. They absolutely would have been in the top 12 already because they came in with so much hype. And the voters this year wanted to see if it was for real, and it is. And now this team controls their own destiny in the Big 12 because Deion Sanders has good players, but clearly knows what he's doing. He has hired a good staff. He is doing it his way, and the future is insanely bright. And the thing that is carrying them, though, it's not just their offense and Shedeur Sanders. It is this defense. No 300-yard passers allowed. No 200 yards rushing the entire season. But you guys, though, we got a little family emergency thing going on right now. So we are going to finish this later on this week. You guys keep it locked. I'm George Wrighster. This is The Unafraid Show.